Welcome to the Big Movement Podcast. If you're ready to create results and make huge strides in your business, finances, personal development, and health, then you're in the right place. Pushing past excuses and powering through procrastination can be a challenge alone. Here, you'll get the support, tools, and knowledge you need to get to the level you desire in your business and life. Let's get started with your host, Byron Ingram.
And welcome to another episode of the Big Movement Podcast. And today we're going to talk about 4 stages of business evolution and why it's important. Ultimately, when you're looking at your business, there's going to be a life cycle to it of where something moves through. So we're going to go through 4 areas. The first one is going to be inception. And inception, that's where you come up with the idea, like, ooh, we have an idea. This is where your startups are. Like, they want to take this enthusiasm, this raw passion for solving a problem and creating a solution for it. That is that inception phase. This is where you're laying out the groundwork. This is where you're putting things in motion. But this is also the time where you have to be most flexible for change. You're not going to use the same strategies in other stages because this is the area where you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to rapidly change to things that are going on. For example, something might not be going according to plan because, let's say, resources change, government regulations change, and things like that as you're trying to get your business launched. So you have to adapt to them accordingly. This is one of the problems out there with businesses is that they have everything laid out to the T. Like on day 1, we're going to do this. Day 2, we're going to do, and so on. But what happens is outside influences begin to affect what you're doing. So you have to decide, do you stick with the original plan or do you become adaptable? Are you malleable to a new solution? And that's ultimately what you have to do in this stage. You have to be ready and able to make adjustments accordingly to achieve your goals. Because if you don't do that, guess what happens? You end up being left behind. This is why a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners end up failing in the beginning because they're not adapting to how the environment is changing. And it's not necessarily, let's say, how government regulations or things like that can affect a business. It's also in terms of how the marketplace is performing, where you think, oh, I have a great idea. Well, some businesses, believe it or not, they don't ever get out of this phase, and here's why. Something might be a very short-lived, timely fashion. Here's a great example when you're looking at it. Think about how many businesses evolved out of when Pokemon Go first came out. How many of those products do you still see running around out there? You might see someone that said, oh my gosh, let me sell extra phone batteries. And they came with a little business concept and they did that really fast. But as the popularity of it waned a little bit, well, guess what? You don't see people talking about it at that same level. So that's one type of business. It never lasted long. So when it comes to growing a business, you have to be thinking about how do you get out of this phase? And that's where you have to look at business concepts that are going to be a little bit more on the long term. It's not going to be something that's short-lived because while that could be great for a short-term profit, you ultimately want to build a business that's going to last you. You're putting energy into something that you can build so it becomes a legacy, not something that it's more like a bottle rocket. It goes poof and it's gone. You have to think long-term. So this is the inception phase, getting your idea out there, getting it to launch, and just getting it going, get those initial customers. Because what happens is you move into that initial growth phase, and this is where you really start running your business. Because at this stage, you've gotten your first couple customers. Now it's like the concept works. Let's really scale this up. So you're increasing your ad spend. You are beginning to figure out what works in terms of sales process and so forth. But a critical component, and we're going to talk more about this in a future episode next week, this is where you have to start documenting everything that you're doing. Because for many entrepreneurs, they're a solopreneur. They're doing everything themselves. But the one thing that's not being done by many solopreneurs is identifying what they're doing. Because you have a way to do something, you're like, well, I can't delegate because it's not going to be done right. Well, because you're not telling anybody. So you need to make sure you document what you're doing. Because guess what that's going to do? That means you can hire people to help scale it. If you like to sell things a certain way, create scripts, create frameworks. If you have people handling customer service, do the same thing there. You need to do these things so that way your growth is able to keep up accordingly. So that's the second phase. That third phase, this is momentum. This is where things are really beginning to take off. You've figured out the exact ideal client you need to be working with. The ad campaigns are working great. You have referral systems in place, and things are continuously scaling. This is powerful. This is the stage that every business wants to get into, because now things are flowing. You have your groove. You're able to do things easier. And this is also the point for the entrepreneur, where many times you can start stepping back a little bit because you have people to do the things that you were doing before, where you might have been working 18-hour days. Well, you might be working, let's say, an 8-hour day because you've hired a couple people. You have the resources to hire those people to do the stuff that you could only do in the past. You have the resource to hire that expertise. And that's where you want to get things to in this phase, because that is where it really begins to take off and grow. And that last phase for that business evolution is maturation. This is where you see these businesses that have been around for years, where everything works smoothly. There's not really any surprises, where they're able to expand accordingly. Think about your businesses like Coca-Cola or Pepsi. A lot of your Fortune 500 companies have been around for a while. Well, they're in that stage because they've grown to that size. They have the processing in place, and they have the resources to expand accordingly. And nothing's like, well, how do we do this? In terms of a solution, they are able to figure it out pretty quickly because they already have the resources in place to make it happen. And ultimately, that's when you start creating the wealth that you want in business, because now it's working in a fashion that you're not having to be in it at all if you don't want to. So this is that stage where you go from being the worker, being involved in the day-to-day, just to strictly being the owner, where you're looking at it from the 50,000-foot view. And that's where you want to ultimately get to in business, is look at how do you go through these phases. Because when you look at it from a different viewpoint, what this is truly about is designing the lifestyle that you want to have. Because you've gone into business so you could be able to have, let's say, more freedom of time to spend with your family and friends. Not necessarily to work more hours, but this is going to help you do that. So what I want you to do in your business today is look at where you are in one of these 4 phases, and then determine what do you need to do to improve the efficiencies there, whether it's operations or it's marketing, so you can take it to that next level, so you can start having more time to spend with your family and friends.
Thanks for listening to the Big Movement Podcast today. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Now that you've surely been inspired to take your entrepreneurial career and business to the next level, you can stop by the website and get more. And if you're ready to boost your business brand, be sure to grab your free report, 7 Easy Steps to Build Your Brand Today.